So last class we have started our discussion on design of kettle type reboiler. Okay, so we all know the applications of kettle type reboiler, and also we have discussed the boiling regime and in which regime normally the reboilers or vaporizers are being operated. Okay, so from the boiling curve we concluded that the vaporizers or kettle type reboilers can be operated in nuclear boiling regime. So, in our design procedure, we have selected the delta T accordingly. Okay. So, uh, why we are selecting this nuclear boiling regime? The point we have discussed, the heat transfer coefficient increases. Okay, with respect to excess temperature, or we can say this excess temperature is equal to T surface temperature minus T saturation temperature or boiling point of the liquid, sometimes liquid mixture. Okay. So the very first step, we know that we have to calculate the heat duty. So the heat duty calculation can be done by making energy balance over the distillation column. Reboilers are positioned at bottom of the distillation column. So by making overall energy balance, that's heat input equal to heat output at steady state condition. The heat input terminologies or terms are include the enthalpy of feed and the heat input to the reboiler. These two are the inputs. Then the heat outputs are your product, residue, okay. Then condenser duty, because the more volatile component comes at the top of the distillation column, so it's being collected in condenser and cooled down to saturate conditions or subcooled condition. Then part of the condensate is sent back to the distillation column, then part is being taken as product. So the product outlet enthalpy has to be accounted. Similarly, the bottom of the distillation column we have kettle type reboiler, or most of the times we have kettle type reboiler. You can say bottom product or residue that's being sent to the vaporized or kettle type reboiler, where it is being heated up. Okay, so the energy given to raise the temperature of the bottom product is considered as heat input, and part of the product is being taken out before sending to the distillation column or sending the vaporizer. Okay, then that is the another term that has to be accounted in terms of energy out from the system. Okay, so by accounting all these things, you can calculate the heat duty. In addition to that, we have to account the loss, heat loss. That heat loss also normally it can be around 5 to 10%. So additional heat duty has to be added to account this heat loss. Okay, so once the heat duty is being calculated, then we will fix the delta T. Okay. So we know that this delta T normally 20 to 30 degrees centigrade for water systems, aqua systems, and 20 to 50 degrees centigrade for light organics. Okay, so by fixing this excess temperature or delta T, you can calculate the temperature of the heating medium. So the heating medium temperature can be calculated Okay, then we have to select the suitable heating medium based on the heating medium temperature. Okay, that also we discussed in detail. Once the heating medium is selected, okay, we can calculate the mass flow rate of the heating medium required. Then by assuming the value of overall heat transfer coefficient, normally you can assume from 1000 watt per meter square degree centigrade. Okay, then you can calculate the area, heat transfer area. Once the heat transfer area is known, you can fix the dimensions. Normally we will select 1-inch tube for these vaporizers or reboilers. Okay, and square pitch will be selected because it is U-tube bundle. Metal type reboiler is U-tube bundle. So sometimes we need cleaning. Okay, sometimes you can see the tubes are very close to each other. Okay, and also we have to bend the tube to make this U-tube. So the thinning effect has to be minimized. So the pitch is normally 1.5 to 2 times of OD of the tube. In general selective heat exchanger, it is around 1.25 times of D0, but this is not the case. Here, the vapor also formed, correct? Because of that's the objective. Vapor is formed. So once the vapor is formed, what happened? The bubbles will form and it will lead to the free surface based on the delta T condition. Sometimes it will form a film, okay, or due to bubble coalescence, vapor blanketing is possible. Okay, so we have to assure that the gap between the tubes should be more side to avoid this vapor blanketing. Okay, because this vapor blanketing will reduce the heat transfer coefficient. Okay, so we have to minimize this vapor blanketing, and we will assume the baffle spacing normally 1 times of ds or the diameter of the cell. Then baffles normally use these cases to support the tubes, not to increase the turbulence, heat transfer coefficient. Okay. So once it is being done, I think up to this we have discussed yesterday. Okay. So once this is being done, we have to calculate the cell side boiling coefficient. Okay, because here the heating surface is submerged in a pool of liquid, correct? So it's like a pool boiling. So your condensation, sorry, your vaporization takes place outside the heating surface. Okay, so cell side boiling coefficient we have to calculate. Here we have different types of equation to calculate the cell side coefficients. One of the simplest form of equation is Monstinsky equation. You can use this equation, Monstinsky equation, to calculate the nucleate boiling coefficient. That is HNB is equal to 0.104 Pc power 0.69 Q power 0.7. This is the heat flux. Q is heat flux. This Pc is critical pressure times of 1.8 P by Pc power 0.17 plus 4 times of P by Pc power 1.2 plus 10 times of P by Pc power 10. Okay. Tube side heat transfer coefficient you can calculate as like our you can use Taylor equation. Sometimes if you have used saturated steam in tube side, such a cases you can assume the value of HI directly as 5000 to 6000 watt per meter square degree centigrade. If you use saturated steam as heating medium in tube side, then calculation of HI is not required. Okay, we can assume the value of heat transfer coefficient around 5000 to 6000 watt per meter square degree centigrade. Okay, that's the point. Okay, so you can assume HI as 6000 watt per meter square degree centigrade if heating medium is steam. Okay, then what you have to do? You have to add if it is 6000, it's like here you no need to include the fouling coefficient also. It includes everything almost. Okay, or if you have used hot oil in tube side, then you have to use the Seerer-Tate equation to calculate the heat transfer coefficient. You know the Seerer-Tate equation, that is Nusselt number is equal to 0.023, Reynolds number power 0.8, then Prandtl number power 0.33, then you may have viscosity correction factor. If you have selected some other heating medium, if steam is selected as a heating medium, you can assume the value of heat transfer coefficient as 6000 watt per meter square degree centigrade. Once it is being done, you have to calculate the overall heat transfer coefficient. So if you have calculated the overall heat transfer coefficient, then calculate the heat transfer area. These procedures are same. Okay, so these procedures are already discussed as like cell and heat exchanger. So then you have to check the percentage excess area. So area provided and area required we have. So area provided should be more than your area required. That is to be 10 to 20% more. Otherwise, you have to make changes in your heat transfer coefficient. Those things. Okay. So once this is being done, once we have validated the sizing of the kettle type reboiler, then we have to check this actual heat flux. Okay, because this is our boiling curve, correct? Okay, so our objective is that we have to operate the exchanger in this region. This is your x-axis, your delta T. Y-axis is sometimes heat transfer coefficient. Sometimes they will refer Q by A also. Okay, this is one. Sometimes they may select this also as a Y-axis. Okay, so our object, this is critical heat flux, correct? So the exchanger has to be operated below the critical heat flux. So now we have calculated the area. So this area provided, using this area provided, we have to check the heat flux, actual heat flux. So the actual heat flux should be less than or equal to 0.7 times of your critical heat flux at critical temperature drop. Critical heat flux at critical temperature drop. Actual heat flux would be less than or equal to 0.7 times of critical heat flux at critical temperature drop. This is the important point. Why we are doing this? We have to check the exchanger is being operated below the critical heat flux. So how to calculate this critical heat flux? We have a different equation. This is the Joubert equation, which is used to calculate the critical heat flux. QC is equal to 0.13 times of lambda latent heat, sigma G rho L minus rho V square power 1 by 4. So this is the critical heat flux. So this is critical heat flux. This is equation, Joubert developed this equation for single tube. So if it is multi-tube, normally this value will be lesser than or less for multiple tubes. This is for single tube equation. So once it is being extended for many tubes, the value calculated, this QC or actual QC will be less than this value. So we have to use this modified Joubert equation almost the same format. Okay, only thing is that this constant, this you can see, this 0.131, this lambda is there. So sigma you have, g you have, rho L minus rho V you have. So all the things are almost same in both the equations. But this constant 0.131 is being calculated using these values. So here you need Pt, D naught, this Kb value and root of nt. Okay, so this Kb value is a function of your tube arrangement. So this Kb normally 0.44 for square tube arrangement and it is 0.41 for triangular tube arrangement. Okay, so the Kb can be assumed 0.4, then you can assume Pt by D naught. Pt is 1.5 times of D naught. So if it is square, you can calculate the value. So root of nt, only variable here is number of tubes. So Kb is fixed, Pt by D naught, you can select 1.5 to 2 times of D naught. So this 2 times of Kb or 1.5 times of Kb. So you will get 0.66, then divided by root of nt, number of tubes you have to calculate. Okay, so once it is being done, you can calculate the critical heat flux. So actual heat flux you can calculate already by energy balance over the distillation column. We have found the actual heat flux. This actual heat flux now can be compared with this critical heat flux. So the ratio between actual heat flux critical heat flux should be less than or equal to 0.7, which means that the exchanger is being operated in the safe zone. It is not operated at critical heat flux condition. It's less than or equal to 0.7 times of critical heat flux. Okay, so now if this condition is being satisfied, next we have to calculate the cell diameter. So in the earlier case, condenser or cell and heat exchanger, once we have decided the layout like PT, D naught, tube arrangement, okay, type of exchanger, number of passes, everything is being decided, we will calculate the cell diameter. But this case, the cell diameter is calculated at the end. Okay, so what is a cell ID? So this is your kettle type reboiler, you can see. For example, this case, yeah, here you can see this is your kettle type reboiler. So this is your bottom product. This is heater depth. So this liquid is taken as a bottom product. So here also you can take bottom product, whatever may be. Okay. So here this vapor will go up. Okay. So if you see the shape of this exchanger, it's like kettle type. So here you have to provide, here this is your U-tube bundle. Okay. So steam is passed and it's being taken out. Okay. So here you have to provide additional head, or you can say vapor liquid disengagement section above the liquid surface. Okay. So the cell ID has to be calculated using this equation. Cell ID is equal to liquid level plus 0.15 to 0.25 times of 0.15 to 0.25 meters of 0.5 to additional space is being given above the liquid level. It is around 15 centimeter to 25 centimeter. Normally this is called vapor liquid disengagement section, or you can call it as free board. Free board height, or you can say vapor liquid disengagement section, or you can call free board. Okay. So cell ID is calculated based on liquid level. How we have to calculate the liquid level? So liquid level is sum of tube bundle plus 50 to 100 mm. So above the tube bundle, you have to maintain this minimum this much amount of liquid height. Okay. So liquid level is tube bundle diameter plus 50 to 100 mm. Okay. So once it is being done, So how will you calculate the tube bundle diameter? This procedure is known, we know. So dB is equal to d naught nt by k power 1 by n. For the selected tube sheet layout, you can calculate the bundle diameter. So bundle diameter is dB is d naught into nt by k power 1 by n. Okay, so you can calculate the bundle diameter. Here you have to take nt dash because this is U-tube bundle. So nt dash is different. Nt dash is equal to nt plus dB by pt. Okay, so that is different for U-tube. Okay, so liquid level is calculated using bundle diameter plus amount of some liquid height above the liquid surface. So once you know this, then you can calculate or you can check out the liquid entrainment, or you can verify this. So now you know the bundle diameter and cell ID. So here you have one thumb rule. So based on the heat flux, this relationship is given. So if the heat flux is less than 25,000 watt per meter square, if the heat flux is less than 25,000 watt per meter square, cell ID to bundle diameter ratio can be 1.2 to 1.5 times up. In general, when you do the calculations, you can arrange this range, you can select 1.5 to 2 times. Okay. So based on assumption, because if you assume the higher end of this ratio, automatically your cell diameter becomes higher, your cost of the exchanger will be higher. Okay. So for the based on this heat flux, you can select this cell ID to bundle diameter ratio. So if it is less than 25,000 watt per meter square, your cell ID to bundle ratio can be 1.2 to 1.5 times. So if the heat flux is in the range of 25,000 to 40,000 watt per meter square, you can select 1.4 to 1.8 times. Or if the heat flux is more than 40,000 watt per meter square, this ratio can be 1.7 to 2 times. That's the idea. Okay, this is another thumb rule. Okay, so based on the heat flux, you can assume the value of this thing. Okay, next you have to check this liquid entrainment because you have free surface, correct? If you take this is the exchanger, this is you can say this is the center. Okay, above that you have liquid. Okay, so this is vapor liquid disengagement section. This is liquid surface. Here you have U-tube. Okay, the heating surface is submerged in the liquid. These are all liquid surface. Okay, so the entrainment is liquid entrainment. There should not be any liquid entrainment. Liquid should not leave this pool of liquid pool or in this portion. Okay, so if this is your exchanger, liquid should not taken by the vapor. Liquid should not be taken by the vapor. Okay, so we have to check this and we have to limit that also. So the liquid entrainment, that is Vmax. Okay, this velocity, that is vapor velocity at liquid surface should be less than this Vmax. So the vapor is leaving the liquid surface, correct? So that vapor leaving velocity should be less than this Vmax. So the Vmax is being calculated using this equation, that is 0.2 times of rho L minus rho V by rho V. Root, or you can write 0.2 times of root of rho L minus rho V by rho V. So this is your Vmax. So once this Vmax is being calculated, that has to be calculated with the actual vapor velocity. So actual vapor velocity should be less than Vmax. So what is actual vapor velocity at liquid surface? That is mv by rho V by liquid surface area. So liquid surface area is nothing but the width of the liquid above the heating surface and length of the tube or length of the tube. So this will provide the liquid surface area, because from here only the vapors are leaving. Okay, this is the liquid surface area. Okay, so like this you have to check. So once the design is being done up to this 11th step, First we are doing sizing. Then once sizing is being done, we have to validate the sizing. Once we have satisfied with this validation of sizing, then we have to check the heat flux. This heat flux should be less than your critical heat flux. So once the critical heat flux, your actual heat flux is less than critical heat flux, then we can find out the cell diameter. This cell diameter can be calculated using bundle diameter. And okay, so the liquid level is nothing but bundle diameter plus the amount of liquid above the heating element. So above the liquid surface we have to provide. So you should know the difference between this value and this value. So the liquid level, this is the liquid level in the exchanger. So bundle diameter we are calculating, above that you have to maintain this space. So this is the liquid level. Okay, so this is empty space. This 0.15 to 0.25 meter is nothing but vapor liquid disengagement section. Above that you don't have any this. The vapor is we are providing the space to because the vapors will take the liquid droplets. Okay, so because of the velocity, settling velocity, what will happen? This vapor will leave the liquid droplets as it has more weight than vapor. So it has to, we have to provide that minimum amount of height for this disengagement. Okay, so that height should be 0.15 to 0.25 meters. Okay. So to ensure that there is no liquid entrainment, we have to find out the maximum vapor velocity and actual vapor velocity. The actual vapor velocity should be less than your maximum vapor velocity. So this is the design of kettle type reboiler. If you have any doubts, please ask. So any of you having clarification in this point? Hello?
Sir, no doubt, sir.
Okay. So now we have seen this procedure only for a single component. If it is multi-component, then the problem is a bit complicated, because we are talking about a single component system. If it is multi-component system, then you have to calculate the boiling point of liquid mixture. It may have 2 liquids or 3 liquids or 4 liquids. So you have to calculate the boiling point of the liquid mixture. Sometimes the range of boiling points. For example, you have component A and component B and component C. If component A boiling point is around 100 degrees centigrade, and compound B the boiling point around 103 degrees centigrade, another compound the boiling point is 105 degrees centigrade. In this case, the average boiling point you can calculate based on the composition. Okay, based on the composition you can find out the average boiling point. If the deviation is not more, then you can use the equations whatever discussed above for estimation of heat transfer coefficient. If the deviations are wide, then we cannot use those equations. Then what you should do, you have to find out the heat transfer coefficient of the mixture, that is this H and B. This H and B has to be corrected. So this H and B is for few component. Now you have to calculate H and B of mixture, correct? So you have to do the correction, that is Fm, that is the correction factor, is H and B of single component. HNB of single component. So how this FM is being calculated? This FM is correction factor of the mixture, that is exponential of minus 0.0083 into TB naught minus TB. Okay, so what is TB naught? TB naught is the temperature of the vapor mixture leaving the reboiler out. Okay, temperature of the vapor mixture leaving the reboiler. I is temperature of the vapor mixture entering the reboiler. Temperature of the vapor mixture entering the reboiler. TB naught minus TBI. Okay, that is FM. So this FM can be calculated and it has to be corrected for the value calculated for single component. Okay, so we all know that this kettle type reboiler can be considered as a one equilibrium stage in distillation column. Okay, so if you have provided a kettle type reboiler, when you calculate the number of stages, you will subtract -1, which means that this reboiler will also act as a stage. Okay, so 100% it's like vaporizer. Okay, so it means that the vapor leaving the reboiler is in equilibrium with the residue. Okay, so the dew point temperature of vapor leaving the reboiler is equal to bubble point of temperature of residue. Bubble point of residue. That's why in distillation column, you know, the vapor leaving each stage is in equilibrium with the liquid leaving in each stage. That's why whenever you are making McCabe and Thiele method, so this 45-degree line, then you have operating line, then you have equilibrium line. Then you will make every time you will touch the equilibrium line and come to operating line, then go to equilibrium line, then come to operating line. This step-by-step procedure you will make McCabe and Thiele method. Okay, which means that in each stage the vapor leaving the stage is in equilibrium with the liquid leaving the stage. So the same thing is being assumed in kettle type reboiler. Okay, so this can be found as assumed as kettle type reboiler as one of the stage of the distillation column. That's why we are subtracting one. Okay, so the bubble point, bubble temperature of liquid entering the reboiler, composition of liquid entering must be determined. Then only you can make, using material balance from the reboiler, you can find out the composition and composition of liquid entering the reboiler. Okay, then only you can found these values. Okay, so this is one point I would like to emphasize. For mixture means the procedure is different. Okay, so with this I complete the kettle type reboiler design. Okay, next I think we can go vertical thermosiphon reboilers. Problem we can solve later. Okay, and Sinath, from tomorrow we don't have class, correct?
Yes, sir. From tomorrow to next week, from 4th only we have class, sir.
Oh, okay. From Monday you are saying, correct?
Yes, sir. Monday.
Oh, okay, okay. So this week you have break for 5 days from that 29.
Yes, sir. 5 days.
Oh, okay.
Yes, sir. 20.
Okay. Okay, so we move to the design of a vertical thermosiphon reboiler. So as we discussed the last class, we have five different type of reboilers, correct? You can see this kettle type reboiler, bundle in column. Bundle in column means instead of having this separate exchanger, this tube bundle will be inserted into the heat exchanger. Okay, so bundle in column, horizontal thermosiphon reboiler like this. in vertical thermosiphon reboiler. If you provide a pump at this point, it becomes post circulation reboilers. Okay, so siphoning effect is created by heating. For example, let's take this vertical thermosiphon reboiler. Here you have a bottom of the distillation column. Here you have a reboiler. So here this is called cold leg, because here we are providing steam to raise the to convert this residue liquid into vapor. So this is called cold leg. This is called hot leg. Okay. So due to this temperature difference, the siphoning effect is being created here. That's why it's called thermosiphon reboiler. That's the reason for to say this is thermosiphon reboiler. Okay. So most of the cases we will select BEM type. You know, B type, B and E shell, M type. E means one exchanger, single pass exchanger, single cell pass exchanger. BEM type heat exchanger we will have. So this will be vertical in position. Okay. So here we have tubes, no, here. So the liquid is flowing through the tubes. The steam will in the cell side, horizontal cell side, vertical tube side, vaporization. Okay. So the inside the tubes, this vaporization of the liquid takes place. It's a partial vaporization. Then what will happen? So here it would be a liquid, saturated liquid. So over the length, what will happen? This density, average density of the mixture will come down. Okay, so density will come down. So the density difference between these two legs, hot leg and cold leg, leads to the siphoning effect. So the siphoning effect or this density difference is due to the temperature change. Okay, so the that's why it's called thermosiphon reboiler. So the design of this vertical thermosiphon reboiler, we are using Kern method. This is the simplest method and very old method. So the vertical thermosiphon reboiler design also completely different. If you see heat exchanger, solenoid heat exchanger, condenser, and kettle type reboiler. In this case, first 6 steps it will be almost same. First, you will calculate the heat duty from the energy balance around the distillation column. Then you have to fix the delta Tm. Okay, you have to fix the delta Tm value, so that you have to assure that the exchanger is being operated below the critical heat flux condition. Okay, then you have to select suitable heating medium. Then calculate the mass flow rate of the heating medium. Then assume the overall heat transfer coefficient U0 around 1000 watt per meter square degree centigrade, and estimate the heat transfer area. Then decide the layout of the exchanger by assuming the value of D0, L, pitch, those things, whatever we discussed earlier. Okay. Apart from that, we have one more thing that is called recirculation ratio. So this is another important one, liquid recirculation, because if you see here no liquid circulation takes place. Here your liquid is circulated through the exchanger. So your liquid is saturated liquid at the bottom of the exchanger. Then you have vapor liquid here, because here we don't have any. We have vapor liquid disengagement section, but though this space has to be given, more space has to be given as like here. But this vapor liquid mixture is going to the distillation column. Okay, it's not like a kettle type reboiler. Okay, so here this liquid recirculation ratio is another important parameter in the design calculation. Okay, so the liquid recirculation ratio is defined as mass flow rate of liquid recirculated to vaporization rate, you can say, or you can say the mass flow rate of liquid at outlet of the reboiler, then mass flow rate of liquid at the inlet of the mass flow rate of vapor in, sorry, this is correct. Mass flow rate of vapor at outlet of the reboiler, or you can say mass flow rate of liquid recirculated to vaporization rate. Both are same. Okay, so you can define this liquid circulation ratio, that is mass flow rate of liquid at outlet of reboiler and mass flow rate of vapor at outlet of the reboiler. Normally this value will be around 4 to 24. Most of the cases for thermosiphon effect, it can be 4 to 6 or 4 to 8. You can fix this value, because based on this only this will one of the major deciding factor in the design of thermosiphon reboiler, because this will decide the pressure drop. Okay, so this here this step, the pressure balance step, is very important in vertical thermosiphon reboiler, vertical thermosiphon reboiler. So how can we make the pressure balance? Here you have a distillation column, this is your cold leg, this is your heat exchanger, this is your hot leg. Okay, at steady state condition, the available differential head is equal to pressure loss in the circuit. So this is your circuit. You can take this is the circuit. You have to make the pressure balance this point. Okay, so delta P available is nothing but pressure loss in the circuit. Okay, so how will you calculate this delta P? So the delta P is available. Delta P available is sum of all these things. Delta P in base of the distillation column, delta P in piping and nozzles. You have piping, no? Sudden expansion, sudden contraction. Okay, you have nozzles. Then delta P in reboiler, that is in the exchanger, tube side of the exchanger. Okay, so here you can neglect these two things, because why? What is the reason? So velocity of liquid through the cell of DC distillation column is very low. So here the velocity is very low. Okay, because the column diameter is very big. Okay, so the pressure drop due to this is also negligible amount. That's why we are neglecting delta P in base of the distillation column. Then this if you provide smooth pipings, okay, and higher sizing of the pipes, if you provide smooth pipe arrangement, smooth pipe arrangements and higher sizing, then this pressure drop will also be very small when compared to this. Okay, so the delta P associated with this piping and nozzles will be also close to 0, and delta P at the base of the distillation column will also be very close to 0. These two are very close to 0. Okay, so the delta P available now, the equation is becomes like this. Delta P available is delta P in reboiler, tube side delta P. Okay, so how will you calculate the delta P available? So delta P available can be calculated like this. That is L is length, this height. This is your L. Okay, L is length of the tube. Then rho L minus rho average. Because at the exchanger inlet it will be a saturated liquid. So that is density at cold leg is rho L. Density in hot leg is rho average. Okay, so this is delta P available. So how to calculate this rho average? It depends on your liquid circulation ratio, liquid recirculation ratio. So this rho average is ln of V naught by Vi. Okay, divided by V naught minus Vi, where V naught is nothing but specific volume of saturated liquid. So Vi is specific volume of saturated liquid. Okay, at inlet of the reboiler. That's why this I. This is specific volume. What is specific volume? Can anyone define specific volume? Meter cube per unit mass. That's specific volume. Meter cube per kg. Okay. So Vi is specific volume of saturated liquid at the inlet of the reboiler. Then V naught is specific volume of vapor liquid mixture, correct? This is vapor liquid mixture at outlet of the reboiler. Specific volume of vapor liquid mixture at outlet of the reboiler. Okay, that is V naught. So to calculate V naught, you need all these things. This ML naught, MV naught, you have to define. Okay, so ML naught we can know. So MV naught you have to calculate. So what is this? So here you can see. So liquid circulation ratio is ML naught. That is ML naught by MV naught. So LCR can define liquid circulation ratio. LCR is ML naught by MV naught. Mass flow rate of liquid at outlet of the reboiler to vaporization rate you can say, or mass flow rate of vapor at the outlet of the reboiler. LCR is ML naught by MV naught. Okay. So if you fix this, you can calculate the value of ML naught from vaporization rate. So vaporization rate you can fix. It's a complete 100% vaporization or the percentage vaporization you can fix. Okay. So once you know ML naught, MV naught, you can calculate this V naught. V naught is nothing but specific volume of vapor liquid mixture out of it. So 1 by V naught you will get the density, rho average. Okay. So this rho average is ln of V naught by Vi by V naught minus Vi. So V naught Vi is specific volume of liquid, okay, at inlet and outlet condition. Okay. So the V naught is calculated using this expression. That is MV naught by rho V plus ML naught by rho L by MV naught minus ML naught. Okay. So Va is 1 by rho L. It is liquid. This is V naught is vapor liquid mixture. Okay. So you can calculate this V naught, and if you substitute, you can calculate the rho average. Once you calculate the rho average, then you can calculate the delta P tube. Because in our case, we assume that the delta P in base of the distillation column and delta P in piping and nozzles are small. So the delta P available for flow is equal to delta P in the reboiler. Okay. So delta P available you can calculate using this hydrostatic equation, L into rho L minus rho average into G. Then delta PT in tubes. This you have to check now. So then you have to check both the values. You have to calculate delta P available separately, delta P in reboiler separately. So delta P in the exchanger you can calculate using this equation. That is delta PT is equal to NP into the same equation whatever we are using. Salinity heat exchange. Okay. So the M value will be 0.25 for Reynolds number less than 2100. This is 0.14 for Reynolds number greater than 2000. So once you calculate the delta PT, you can compare this delta P available and delta P. Now you have 5 different possible cases because this is being calculated based on the assumed value of liquid recirculation ratio. Okay. So here you may get 5 different possible cases. Your delta P available is equal to delta PT. If it is so, we can say the assumed value of LCR is correct. Then if delta P available may be greater than your delta P tube, delta P available is very higher than your delta P tube, or you can say delta P available by delta PT can be greater than 50. Sometimes delta P available can be less than delta P tube. Delta P available can be very much less than delta P tube. So these cases we can discuss in next class. Do you have any doubts at this point? Hello?
No, sir.
No doubt, sir.
So have you got the points? If you have any doubts, please interrupt me. It's going well?
Sir, okay. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yeah. So do you have any issue with the books? Are you referring the CR volume 6? Most of the times I follow this book only. Okay.
Sir, that book is uploaded, I guess, sir. So